And I have the honor of being the chairman of the North Carolina Board of Transportation. And I'd like to welcome everyone here to our meeting today, which we're holding in Fayetteville. We have a number of important business items to go through this morning, but we're also being able to honor some folks who have given great service to our state. And we have a number of guests with those folks. We have our former Division 6 board member Terry Hutchins is here. Former Secretary of Transportation Lindo Tippett is here. And former board member Matt Campbell is here with their guests. So we welcome all of you and thank you for all of your prior service to this board and to our state, because we know that you all, in addition to serving the Department of Transportation, also played important roles in your community as well. So thank you for that, and we look forward to honoring you a little later in the agenda. I wanted to start off by saying thanks to Grady Hunt and Greg Burns. They were the really the linchpins for planning our entire trip here to Fayetteville, along with Ann DeShong and her staff. It's really incredible how much effort it takes to have a flawless and great event, and they really did a great job. I think all of us had a great experience in Buies Creek on Tuesday night with the folks at Campbell University and learned about their school, their area, their transportation needs, and it's refreshing to see people so happy and satisfied with the things that we're able to help them with. I don't know that I've ever seen anyone so excited about roundabouts, but the next time someone in my area complains about a roundabout, I'm going to put them in the car and take them to Buies Creek and let them talk to the folks at Campbell. But that was a really good experience to see that part of Division 6. And then, of course, yesterday, start out the morning at Fort Bragg, and Colonel Reed, thank you and your garrison for the great tour and the experiences that we had there, and really understanding the impact that Fort Bragg has on this area and our state, and also the important capabilities that Fort Bragg brings to the defense of our nation, and how critical that is, and how we could play a small role in helping with some infrastructure to facilitate that. So thank you for that. We had a great experience there, and then we had a super event at the museum downtown, which is really I know there are many people in this room from Fayetteville who back a long time ago said, if you'll just build this here, it'll be a spur for economic development. And boy, you can see what's happened in the time that museum has been built and has been there. And we were able to have a great event there last night, meet a lot of community leaders and have good conversation. And we're able to do the honorary designation for the overlay on 295 for the Airborne and Special Operations Highway, which those signs will be going up if they're not already up. Sometimes our staff is so efficient they have them up by the time we take the uncover the cloth. But then we transitioned over to the ballpark and got to see a ball game, and I really personally enjoyed. I had an opportunity to talk with several council members and local businessmen about the economic development that's going on in the downtown area, particularly what's happening right there around the ballpark, and that's really encouraging, and I think there are great things going to be happening in that area, and it's an interesting from a transportation perspective. You've got a lot of modes of transportation right there. We used two of them last night. We rode the bus there, and then we walked to the ballpark, but we heard the train the whole time. So there was a lot of transportation going on, and of course we saw lots of images and actually a real C-47 in the museum. So there was some aviation there as well too, although we didn't directly participate in that. But thank you all for helping put that together. Our board and our staff is so appreciative when we get to go to different parts of our state and learn about what's going on there and see what's happening, see what's working, see what the needs are that we might could help with, and actually take ideas back to our own respective areas of the state so that we can replicate success where we see it. So thank you all, everyone who was involved in that. With that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. We've got a quorum, obviously, but if I could get the folks who are calling in to identify themselves on the phone so that we can have that in our minutes. All right, Mike and Thomas, thank you for that. I will start with our ethics statement. In accordance with State Government Ethics Act, Executive Order Number 2, issued on January 12, 2009, and NCGS Section 143B-350, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict. To comply with this statement and the state ethics law, I ask whether any board member has a known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before the board today. If so, please identify the conflict or appearance of conflict when the item appears on the agenda for consideration, refrain from any undue participation in the particular matter involved, and sign before our notary the declaration that has been provided to you for such purpose. As our usual practice, at the time comes when we start voting on specific action items, I'll give board members an opportunity to identify any particular conflicts you may have at that time. Our first action item is the approval of the April 4, 2019 minutes. They've been distributed. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those? And are there any comments, additions, or edits? Seeing none, motion by Coley to approve, second by Andy. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Aye. Oh, Nina, are you on? Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. So we've got Vice Chairman Schlossberg-Landis on the phone as well. All right. Those pass unanimously. All right. Our next agenda item is I'm going to use the chairman's discretion to pull an item forward in the agenda. This is something item O is normally taken care at the end of the meeting, but this is such a special occasion, we're going to pull that forward. This is the section where we have municipal and special agreements. I'd like to invite Colonel Reed, the garrison commander at Fort Bragg, and any members of his team forward, and Grady and Greg as well. And we're going to have a signing after we approve item O for a memorandum of agreement that you all heard about yesterday in terms of where we're going to be able to help Fort Bragg with some of the maintenance of the roads that go through there. Does anyone have a conflict of interest with any items in item O? All right. See, and we're just going to do item O at this time. We'll do the rest of the items a little later.
As I sit here, I don't remember the numbers of mine, but they're going to be shown on my form.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. All right. Is there a motion to approve item O?
Motion to approve.
All right. Motion by Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jack. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So what we're going to celebrate here in just a minute is the intergovernmental agreement and memorandum of agreement between the state and Fort Bragg, in which we're able to assist with some of the state roads that go through the military reservation there. And this has not only the benefit of helping, our partners at Fort Bragg in terms of their internal transportation and the ability to do their mission better, but it also helps our citizens, many of whom use these roads as a commuting route, to go back and forth from their work and their homes. So it's a great opportunity. I'm very appreciative that the Secretary and the Colonel have been able to work this out, and so now we're going to have a little ceremonial agreement signing for just a second, and then I'll give the Colonel an opportunity to say a few words. So if the folks who are taking pictures want to come on up, we'll go ahead and have that.
What a distinct honor to stand here before you today and be a representative for the 18th Airborne Corps as well as the service members that reside here on this installation. On behalf of Lieutenant General LaCamera, the Senior Commander of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, as well as the 18th Airborne Corps Commander, you know, we talk about unity, we talk about a vision, we talk about success, we talk about mission readiness, and that's exactly what this is about. The unity of this community coming together to achieve something more than just taking care of our military community, because it is, out in that training area, roads that the community traverses to get from point A to point B, and it is a much safer, much more efficient way to do that. So this agreement that we just signed is all about taking care of this community as well as the military portion of this community. If 2/3 of the installation lives off the installation, we are definitely part of the surrounding community, those 11 counties that we have members living in. So I think the significance of this started several years ago, so it wasn't under my tenure. But what I will tell you is, as you continue to progress and seek the goodness and the agreements with each other, this is definitely a mark on the wall for everyone coming together. And you know how the governor talks about this is the most military-friendly state in America. This is a huge testament to that, of how we are actually working together to actually make that statement accurate. And I appreciate your efforts and your continued emphasis to be able to address this for the good of the community. So thank you very much, and I appreciate all of you coming here, being a part of this community, but also seeing the significance of what this community brings to the National Command Authority. So thank you very much. Thanks.
All right. Our next action item involves honoring one of our, as I like to say, alumni. Could I get? Well, I should have asked Greg and Grady to stay up here. Greg and Grady, could y'all come back up along with Terry? So our other alumni, Mr. Campbell and Secretary Tippett, will recognize this and appreciate the honor of this award. This is the Road Gang Award, which is the highest award at NCDOT that we give to our employees, our board members, and other folks who make great contributions to the transportation in our state. So it's a great privilege of mine today to be able to present this to Terry Hutchins, who Terry. Those of you in the Fayetteville community know Terry well and know that his service on the Board of Transportation is just a small part of his service to this community. He's been involved in a number of community organizations over the years. Is a prominent attorney in in Fayetteville, and most recently, I was teasing him before the board meeting. He's been appointed to the Board of Governors for the university system, and so that's a tremendous honor, and certainly not only well deserved, but Terry is well suited. All of you who served with Terry or know Terry personally know that his demeanor, his professionalism, his class are something that will serve that board very well and serve the citizens of our state very well. So, Terry, I'd like to present you with the Road Gang Award. We'll get a photo in just a second, and then I'd like to invite you to come up and say a few words.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, members of the board. Miss you guys. Had a lot of fun when we were together. It's a great group of folks, great opportunity to serve this state and our community, one that I will cherish for a long time. I'm grateful to former Governor McCrory for appointing me to the board, and former Governor Martin for appointing me to the board, and for Governor Cooper to let me stay on a couple of years after he got there. Didn't go unnoticed. It's a great group of people, a great department, great service to our state. I'm just really proud to be here with my good friends, Mac Campbell from Elizabethtown, and my very good friend, Lindo Tippett, here in Fayetteville. Good fellow, great citizen, and he well deserves the award that you're about to give him. So thank you very much for this award. I'm very honored. I should also point out that this red border is a border that we should be using on all road gangs. Not that blue thing that...
As those of you who on the board certainly know, when we had a new policy about putting up road signs for our university teams that win national championships, and the first one that went up, many of us thought it was great, some people didn't, and there was a bit of controversy over the location of it. I think Joey Hopkins back there somehow or another got real close to the Carter Finley Stadium, which upset a few people. And so Terry called me one night and he said, I think I'm the only state alum on the board and they're giving me a hard time. Can we talk about doing something about easing the pain here? And so that we ended up moving the sign further away from the state campus, and that was the right thing to do. And that's a great example of Terry's leadership and his ability to handle issues that are controversial. And so, but I don't know if we did that special for you with the red, but I'd like to give Ann credit for that. So, all right, our next agenda item is the consideration of the Mac Campbell Jr. Highway designation, and I'd like to ask Grady Hunt to come forward and read that resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm honored to read this resolution in honor of a person I call a friend, Matt Campbell. Whereas Dallas McQueen, Matt Campbell Jr., is involved, committed, and a good steward to the Elizabethtown community. Whereas Mr. Campbell values the importance of giving back to his community with his willingness to lend a helping hand whenever it is needed. And whereas for numerous years, Mr. Campbell served on the North Carolina Board of Transportation representing Bladen County, for which many transportation projects were funded. And whereas Mr. Campbell serves as president of the Bladen We Care Foundation Board and organizes annual fundraisers for this organization to provide for those in need in Bladen County. Whereas another significant contribution to the community is Mr. Campbell's role in getting the North Carolina Department of Transportation's call center located in the Elizabethtown Industrial Park, which created well-established jobs. Whereas with his true leadership, Mr. Campbell serves on many boards, including the local advisory boards for the Airport Economic Development Commission, Bladen's Blooming, and Bladen County Committee of 100. Whereas the family of Mr. Campbell supports the request of the Town Council to have North Carolina Board of Transportation named the NC Highway 87 Bypass in his honor. And whereas the Town of Elizabethtown Council requests the Transportation Board named the NC Highway 87 Bypass in Mr. Campbell's honor as well. Now therefore be it resolved that the North Carolina Board of Transportation names the NC 87 Bypass from NC 41 to NC 87 in Bladen County as the Matt Campbell Jr. Highway, that appropriate signs will be erected at a suitable time. Adopted this the 2nd day of May 2019 by the North Carolina Board of Transportation. Chairman Michael Fox, Secretary Jim Trogdon.
I'll take that as a motion from Grady.
Second.
I'd like to second and appreciate the opportunity. Matt Campbell and I served together in the North Carolina JCs many, many years ago. And you heard about his leadership, some of his leadership abilities just then. But I think this is an incredibly well-deserved honor. Wonderful family, wonderful business, and his beautiful wife Sylvia is the mayor of Elizabethtown and has been for 20-some years. It's just an incredible family and a great honor. So I second that motion.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. All right, that passes unanimously. Mr. Campbell, if you and your family would like to come up, we'll take some photos and give you an opportunity to say anything if you'd like.
Sam, how you doing this morning? How you doing? I got in bed, I can't stand the damn thing. I did. I was tired. Who won the game last night, by the way? Anyway, did they win? Woodpecker? Woodpecker.
We made it 4 minutes.
Well, I made it 5.
First of all, I want to say thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, my friend Grady Hunt, for the presentation. And I'm humbled and I'm really honored. I told Greg Burns the other day, and I sincerely meant it, even though the designation will have my name on it, anything that we, and I use the word we, accomplished in that my 8 years of service on the Board of Transportation was a we service. It was a combination of Secretary Tippett and Dan Devon and their leadership, and I'm honored to be here today with Secretary Tippett, and I'm excited about his opportunity there and the 16 years of his life that he gave for transportation, but also the Division 6 folks that we worked with for 8 years, with Terry Gibson and Greg and Drew Cox and all the men and women who work in Division 6 and who work in transportation in Raleigh. It's all about them. It's not about me. And I appreciate the opportunities and the friendships that I made over the years, and will continue to do what I can to make North Carolina a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next agenda item is the Lindo Tippett Highway consideration, and I'd like to ask Gus Tullis to come up and read a resolution.
This is my lucky day to have served with Mac and also to have served with Lindo Tippett. This is a resolution for Lindo Tippett Highway. Whereas, as a businessman and leader in the community, Lindo Tippett has been a champion for Cumberland County for many years. Whereas Mr. Tippett served as president of the Fayetteville Cumberland Chamber of Commerce and chairman of the Public Works Commission. He was active in getting funding for the Cape Fear Botanical Garden. He has been a strong supporter of Methodist University and was also instrumental in getting the U.S. Army Airborne and Special Operations Museum located downtown instead of at Fort Bragg. And we visited there last night, and it is incredible. Whereas Governor Mike Easley appointed Mr. Tippett to be Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Transportation, where he served with distinction for 8 years. And whereas prior to the appointment as Secretary of Transportation, Mr. Tippett also served as on the North Carolina Board of Transportation, representing Division 6, which includes Cumberland County. Whereas in gratitude for his service to Cumberland County, particularly for his leadership in enhancing the public transportation and the system in the state, the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners requests that the North Carolina Board of Transportation to name a section of I-295 within Cumberland County in honor of Lindo Tippett. Now therefore be it resolved that the North Carolina Board of Transportation names a section of I-295 from I-95 to US 401 in Cumberland County as the Lindo Tippett Highway. The appropriate signs will be erected at a suitable time, adopted this second day of May 2019 by the North Carolina Board of Transportation and signed by Michael Fox, Chairman, James Trogdon, Secretary.
Take that as a motion from Gus. Is there a second? Second by Andy. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously as well. I'd like to invite Secretary Tippett and his family and friends to come up.
Very good.
Yeah, you come over here if you want. Here we go this way.
I guess we didn't have many family and friends.
No. Come on over, we'll get a picture first. All right. Congratulations. Yeah, let's get give one of them, and just wipe the hole there.
Hold this.
Dan Devon.
Where's Dan? Dan Devon.
Come on up.
here.
He was the chief deputy.
Yeah.
He was the Bobby Lewis and the David Howard during Lindo's time. Chief Deputy.
Yeah, come on in and get in the photo with us.
Come on over here, Dan. Yeah, right there first. Okay, go.
Yes, sir. First of all, I need to respond to Terry Hutchins' comment. As you all know, the state was built with a blue foundation, and it will remain that. But
I'm sure that's not the first conversation like that you and Mr. Hutchins have ever had.
it's weekly. But Terry's a great guy, did a lot of good work for Cumberland County, as did many others at DOT, the city of Fayetteville, county of Cumberland, our DOT staff, not only in Division 6, but throughout the state. It's a great honor to have a road named for you. Lots of times I never knew where I was, but now I will at some particular time. So you have done me well there. I made a couple of comments here to recall. Governor Hunt appointed me to the board back in the 90s, which I served as Mac did following me, and then now Grady. And that was quite an honor to see the vision for highway transportation throughout the state, not just Cumberland County, but to try to get the loops developed for all the cities in the state. That was a thrust of my administration. We had the Highway Trust Fund for funding such things back then. And another initiative which we had was changing the department's view of environmental responsibilities, which was not always popular with our 1,600 engineers, but after they received the message from many of us on the board, including Nina Schlossberg, who played a great role in that, we did adopt what was a wetland mitigation program, the first in the nation. Our department won several national awards for our environmental policies, which we adopted, and I was very proud of that. But most of all, I'm proud of Cumberland County, the progress we've made in transportation, the help we've had from former highway commissioners, including Terry Hutchins, Albert McCauley, Gary Ciccone, and others. Grady is left with all that job. It's not often that a former anything gets to speak to a distinguished group like this, and with that, I say thank you for being in Fayetteville, and thank you for this great honor.
Along the lines of what Secretary Tippett just said, I will give you the good news. We're finishing up many of those loops that that you started on, and those are all really adding to the economic vitality of our state in the various areas. It was interesting with Secretary Tippett's recalling of the various folks who, preceded and followed him on the board. One of my predecessors in Division 7, Doug Gallion, who was chairman for many years and many of you served with, told me something that was very, very wise and very true when I went on the board, and I think the Secretary Tippett's remarks are illustrative of that. He says, you'll spend whatever time you have on the board cutting ribbons and taking credit for the things that the people before you have started and gotten along the way. And I know all of the board members have found that to be very true, and so this role is really more of a stewardship for your area and for the department, because you try to take good care of it while you have responsibility for it and pass it along to the next person and appreciate what the people who have preceded you have done. So It's these moments when we get to, reflect and honor our former colleagues are really special to the board. And so I appreciate that and thank all of you for being here for this and allowing us to participate in this. At this time, I'll deliver the remarks from Secretary Trogdon. Unfortunately, he was not able to come this morning. He very much wanted to be here for no other reason than to participate in honoring our former board members, but the legislature is in session and there are some important items relating to transportation and the department that he had to stay in Raleigh for this morning. So he sends his regrets, but I'd like to be able to at least deliver his remarks. We've had a lot going on in the department this month. One of the very significant items that the Secretary participated in was the groundbreaking last Wednesday on the new Carolina Connector project in Edgecombe County. And I know Gus was there along with the governor and many folks interested in that project. In North Carolina, we're at a crossroads in transportation. Our population is increasing and our demographics are changing. Having projects like the Carolina Connector bring critical connections to all of the modes of transportation. For those of you who may not be familiar with that, that is a brand new facility that CSX has partnered with the state on, where we'll be bringing items and freight in by rail car and then transferring it to trucks to be distributed all over the East Coast and the United States. And so these connections, particularly in that part of North Carolina, really fulfill a missing link that we've had in our freight logistics network, and they're vitally important. And as many of you who have followed this project know, it's had its highs and lows at various times, and the scope of it has changed. But what will be built there is a great project, and it really involved a team effort between Governor Cooper, DOT, CSX, and the Carolinas Gateway Partnership. We expect construction to take 18 to 20 months and for the project to be completed by late 2020. This is one of the things that we as a department, I think, is one of our critical roles, which are infrastructure investments, and they really change communities where those investments occur, and it allows us to compete for jobs and support the quality of life that we all know and enjoy in North Carolina. One of the other big events that's occurring right now at NCDOT is tomorrow morning we have our inaugural meeting of something that's known as the NC First Commission. Secretary created that in March, and the role of that commission is to evaluate the state's current and future transportation investment needs and advise the Secretary and the board on new and better ways to ensure critical financial resources are available for the future. Certainly our three alumni that we've honored here this morning are well aware that the way we fund our transportation needs in North Carolina is largely dependent on the highway use tax, and that is a tax that has served us well over the years, but in the future is going to be a declining source of revenue due to many reasons. One, increased fuel efficiency for vehicles, but also as more folks move to electric vehicles or propane vehicles, then we'll collect less revenue for that. So we have to start really focusing now on how we're going to replace that. And there's been good work done. Previously, our FAST committee has been looking at this for several years, not only during Tony's tenure as chairman, but even before. The board before did a lot of good work on that. But the Secretary felt like that it would be good to have a coalition of folks representing many different areas to come together as well and look at this so that together we could be ready to present an idea for what the future is. We've got 14 experts in business, finance, and public policy from across North Carolina to participate in this, and we're counting on their expertise and the research they're going to do to develop a sustainable long-range transportation investment strategy. They're going to, as I said, they're going to meet for the first time tomorrow in the Highway building, and we'll live stream that meeting in case anyone would like to watch. We've got some other exciting news from the coast. Our ports, we've just had the third Neo-Panamax crane arrive at Wilmington after traveling from China. This crane enables the port to operate ships carrying 14,000 containers, and these are the largest ships operating on the East Coast. So I don't know that I can imagine a ship with 14,000 containers, but it's pretty massive, and those cranes will allow us to be able to service those ships, which means that North Carolinians get the benefit of having that come into our port, and our businesses in North Carolina get the benefit of being able to utilize those ships. We've also celebrated in the Charlotte area the opening in mid-April of the Sugar Creek Road Bridge. The Sugar Creek is the busiest railroad crossing in the state, with more than 40 Norfolk Southern freight trains and another 10 passenger trains each day. And this bridge will improve safety and keep traffic and trains moving efficiently in that area, largely by removing the train-car interaction there. So that's one of a continued number of efforts that we have across our state to improve safety at rail crossings and also improve the efficiency and speed of the folks operating the railroads in our state. Related to safety, it's one of our top priorities at NCDOT, as all of you know, and as part of our safety initiative, in April, we gave away bike helmets to a record number of children. This year, 3,320 children received life-saving bicycle helmets on yesterday, on May 1st. And this allows, obviously, children who may not have the ability to have a helmet another way to reduce injuries and fatalities. We know that less than half of all children wear a helmet while biking, but they've been shown to reduce the risk of severe brain injuries by merely 90%. So there's over 3,000 children that we were able to help this month, so that deserves celebration. We've also got a national drone award at the this week at the Association for Unmanned Vehicle Systems International Annual Exponential Conference in Chicago. Our aviation division was awarded the Excellence Award for groundbreaking use of drones during our response to Hurricane Florence. As many of you know, a lot of the infrastructure that was damaged or rendered inoperable or flooded by Hurricane Florence, we weren't even able to get to see a lot of it because of the floodwaters. So our aviation division really pioneered and used some groundbreaking ideas to help us understand the extent and the nature of what the flooding was, and that's what they are being recognized and honored for at this conference. And we've really become a leader in this across the country, and our programs are being replicated in other states throughout the country. And obviously, you know, their work was done during a crisis, so it was even more important to have good information on, you know, what roads were flooded. And I know we even worked with other agencies. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources used some of our drones to get in to look at some hog farms that they were concerned about the lagoons overflowing, but they couldn't reach by road. So it was truly a team effort from the drone division, and we're proud of the award they received. One final announcement. John Rouse, is John here? Yeah, he's in the back. In the classic DOT way, we've given John another hat to wear, one of which is very well deserved. John is currently our Eastern Chief Deputy Engineer, and he has agreed to serve as the interim executive director for the Global Transpark. John replaces Alan Thomas. Alan resigned in March to run for the late Walter Jones seat in Congress, and Alan served GTP well, and we wish him well. As a matter of fact, I think he had an election yesterday, so he's probably celebrating it, but he's still busy. This is an exciting time for the Global Transpark, and I know John's going to do a great job down there as the interim director. So congratulations, John. We look forward to working with you in that regard. That is the end of the Secretary's remarks, and as I said earlier, I know he wishes that he could be here with us today, but he had items in Raleigh that required his attention at the legislature. Our next item is delegated authority. For the record, items C, D, E, H, and L are delegated to the Secretary and require no formal action by the board. One note on item C, action is being delayed on one project to allow additional time for internal review, and all remaining projects were awarded by the Secretary to the lower bidder. Next, we have a presentation from the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to invite Christine Michaels, who's the president and CEO of the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce, to come forward and provide us with a presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Fayetteville and Cumberland County. It's a delight to have you all here today and to have this opportunity. I do want to acknowledge our FAMPO, which is a great partner of ours in keeping us abreast of transportation happenings and giving us some input into that process, which is really vital for our businesses. I am also very pleased to be sharing my time today with the President and CEO of the Fayetteville Cumberland Economic Development Corporation. He's going to talk to you about some development projects, so my presentation is going to be slightly different. So what I wanted to do, first of all, is just to brief you a little bit on what the Chamber is all about. If we could have the next slide. I have one. All right. Okay, so our chamber represents roughly 700 businesses in the Fayetteville-Cumberland area. They also extend to Raleigh and surrounding territories, but we are primarily small business. We are very lucky to have the larger corporations as our members, but most of our businesses are 50 or fewer employees, and they are located within the city of Fayetteville in a broad category of types of business, but they do represent primarily the service industries. And why that would be important to this body would be we have a lot of coming and going traffic in and out of those businesses, which we've been very pleased, though, to see a great amount of development and private investment amongst our members. And those would include public supermarkets have a new location. And these would be projects in the past 2 years since I have been in my position, or projects that are planned. 175 employees they're bringing to Rayford Road. We also have Walk-On's Bistro coming to us through New Orleans, and that's a remodel of an existing restaurant, but because of the name recognition is expected to bring in a great deal of traffic. We have our very first Biscuitville going in on Grove Street, which is one of the streets surrounding our downtown. We also have K&W Carolina Kitchen. That was a remodel of a very popular facility and an expansion that is bringing new traffic patterns to that plaza. And Dirtbag Ales has opened a very large second location out in the Hope Mills area. And if you see a pattern, you can tell that Fayetteville and Cumberland County love food. But these are very well-known establishments that are in expansion mode. And we also have a brand new Mercedes-Benz dealership. And then probably one of our largest projects was Freedom Town Center, and that is major retailers, restaurants in a brand new, beautiful development that's off Cliffdale Road. Fayetteville State right now is working in partnership with the city of Fayetteville to build a new wellness center. The city's putting in a senior center, and Fayetteville State is going to have a wellness center, 2 brand new buildings in the area right around FSU and Filter Plant Drive. And then we had the construction of the Southern Regional Area Health Education Center on Owen Drive near the hospital, and also a total revamp of a building to produce the Stephen Cohen Military Family Clinic. So again, we've got these larger projects. We are so thrilled to have this type of development, but it does bring with it some challenges, obviously, for getting folks around. And then really, I'm sure you got to see the Prince Charles Hotel, a brand new Segra Stadium that we're so proud of. And we've also had, through Robert's efforts, the DHL Campbell Soup project that he's going to talk to you about out in one of our business parks, and then a large firm, defense-related, that is adding 200 jobs over the next few years. And this was my attempt last night at map making with a new software program. So this sort of highlights where these projects are, and you'll see some of those, any of the blue markers would indicate, and actually the breadth of where these projects are taking place was too large to actually fit into any kind of a legible map for you to see. But you can tell they are really scattered around the city. And so we're seeing a lot of this. And I'm sure you're very familiar with, oh no, I have to merge now and get into this lane. I'm needing to take a detour. And I think our residents are trying their best to still keep patronizing these businesses while all of this road work is taking place. But I am hearing just anecdotally from certain people that it does obviously have an impact, especially to a business that is reliant upon drive-in business. So we have a lot going on with the railroad crossings, closures, traffic patterns, detours, sometimes taking place simultaneously. And especially with the rail crossing situation, we've had a lot of work happening there that just happens to abut another construction project. And you may have experienced that when you were on your tours yesterday. So what obviously is that impact to the local business community is that a lot of drivers are taking different routes. They're avoiding certain areas. They may be focusing so much on road changing patterns that they're not seeing driveways, they're not seeing advertisements like they normally would. And so it's changing the pattern of commerce while all of this is taking place. And also, and I think we've all experienced this personally, you're trying to get to a business, you can't quite make the turn. How many times will you really make that U-turn, go back around, and go back into that business without saying, oh, I'll just do it some other time, or, you know, I'll go to the same kind of store that's up the road just for now. So we do have concern being expressed by our members in how all this will impact them. And I personally had experience at Chambers of Commerce in Florida, where we had one very significant artery, kind of like our Rayford Road coming up, that underwent this type of a massive redevelopment. It was a road widening, and because of heavy traffic congestion. And what we did was partner with DOT in that area to actually do a campaign to try to support those businesses. And I know, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned that you want to take back some ideas that could be replicated elsewhere. And what this was pretty much a signage program in conjunction with a marketing campaign. So DOT provided signage saying, you know, this is your proper path to take. Very clearly cone markings where you would turn to get into businesses, where the entry and exit points were, and just really trying to make it as easy as possible for customers to get to businesses. And so a lot of these kind of signs, and again, the cones were used. And then what the chamber did is we did an online and media campaign that said, and it was called Palm Bay Road. Palm Bay Road is open. And we actually had shopping days, shopping weeks, shopping weekends, when we encouraged people to patronize businesses in that area to minimize the impact of road work. So I would just encourage you that if there's anything that can be done as these projects go on, especially if you've got smaller businesses that are impacted, anything you can do to help in that regard is definitely most appreciated by them. And then I was able to talk to our airport director yesterday. He did ask me to relate to you. He would appreciate support for the expansion that they're doing on the terminal there. There may be some funding gaps, and they are trying to complete the last phase of this project, and so he asked for your generous consideration in that regard. But I wanted to thank you for being here, first of all, for taking your board meetings on the road, for learning about different parts of our state, especially our area, and for the ability to give input into the highway projects. It's really been a pleasure to work with FAMPO, to have presentations on highway projects, to get input from our business members as to what's going on. And I just thank you so much for NC Moves, the surveys that you're doing, and other ways that you're gathering input. So thank you so much for the opportunity. And I would like to bring up Mr. Van Giens.
Well, thank you again for being here. My name is Robert Van Giens. I'm the president and CEO of the Fayetteville Cumberland Economic Development Corporation. To shorten that, it's FCDC. To shorten Van Giens, they call me Robo. So it's great having you here. But in my 2 years in Fayetteville and Cumberland County, I've been blessed with some great partnerships. Christine Michael sharing her time with me, Joel Strickland and his team at the MPO, Greg Burns and his entire staff. I mean, just after 10 years in Division 9, it's like a breath of fresh air. I mean, hey, Pat. Sorry. It's just great seeing my old friend Pat Ivey here, who was just an incredible partner. He could tell you some tales about how crazy it's actually. I just found out your spouse's birthplace. We had some fun in Granite Quarry, North Carolina. Y'all just don't want to know about. But in all seriousness, a quick disclaimer. Any good ideas I say are those of my elected officials. Any bad ideas are mine and mine alone and should duly be ignored. But no good ideas happen in a vacuum. Many of the things I'm going to touch on relating to economic development are already on your radar, and some of those things are actually on your agenda here today. When we talk about Fayetteville and Cumberland County, we talk about a quality workforce, 7,000 soldiers transitioning out of Fort Bragg each year. The youngest metro in the Carolinas, an average age of 30.7, and we are a diverse community, probably more diverse than any city in the Southeast, thanks to the influences of our soldiers and their travels and their families. We have 82 native languages spoken in our schools from 84 countries. But you got to see some of what we have going on in our downtown, and I won't belabor it. We are working to be more innovative. We are working to be more collaborative to break down silos. And we actually believe that we are well positioned here in the 95 corridor, the largest city between Richmond and Savannah, with a 26% cost of living lower than Northern Virginia, to compete well, especially now the Amazon effect up in D.C. is going to push even more people down this way. So for us, we have been working on building some momentum here. Unemployment has dropped. We are the largest Tier 1 county in the state. Not something we're proud of, but it's a reality we're dealing with here. We also typically run higher than the state average on unemployment, and we have rampant underemployment, but we're trying to improve on all of those, down to 5.4%, 1,900 more people working in our county than a year ago, and 1,200 of those jobs are in our county, meaning that we are keeping our people local. Just some of our activity we're seeing going on as far as economic development goes, but I won't belabor these here. You did get to see, though, yesterday, the downtown development, and it is impressive what the activity builds for us. But right now, that's a $150 million project. These numbers need to be updated. $130 million total economic impact on our community. I think the number of times we hear people in Fayetteville say, "I can't believe this is in Fayetteville," is worth every penny of public dollars we put into that project. We are an incredible community, but what I said 2 years ago, I stand by. We actually hear our own harshest critic. If people from the outside can see it, we need to understand and believe it ourselves. But we will, in 18, hopefully here later on this month, with the help of the Governor's Office and Department of Commerce and the EDP&C, who we had here the last 2 days, crossed 1,000 job of announcements. And these are projects worked and landed with our partners here, and $35 million at the airport. 5 new hotel developments, bringing on another 200 rooms, 1 million square feet of new construction. Right now, there's over $150 million of construction happening between grading and CO in Cumberland County. So we are starting to pick up some momentum. But as it relates to transportation, our transportation infrastructure in the state and our position in the Southeast is something that we rely on heavily when promoting our value-added proposition. The fact that we're on Main Street, USA, Interstate 95, our proximity to the ports, our accessibility. Thank you for the improvements to 74 back over to Charlotte. As I've been trying to sell my house for the last 2 years, it helped immensely, cutting down on that, and 421 back to Salisbury. But also our 2 airports in close proximity and the work that we're doing across the way. Opportunity zones, I'm sure everyone's talking about it. I just put that up here to say we are seeing a ton of activity, a lot of venture capital investment and interest in our downtown and other areas. But specifically to you and your board, thank you for the support you gave us on the Campbell Soup project, that we now have the light in, the roads going in. When I landed this deal, there's 700,000 square feet out of the ground. We have other projects looking. They said, wow, it's great that you got that done, considering it's been finished for 20 years. I said, no, it was almost finished for 20 years. Without you, we wouldn't have the road. Without the state of North Carolina, we wouldn't have the gas line in. Without our partners in the power industry, we wouldn't have the streetlights that we should have. Down on 95, where the widening is happening, where you're also working on a new interchange, and Greg will get, it's the Chickenfoot Road area, and I can't remember the exit, but that's being done right now. We now have fully funded private sector spec building over 1 million square feet of buildings on their own. That's a first for our county. But why? Because it's within eyesight of 95, and it's where a new interchange improvements are happening to make it easily accessible for truck transportation. Around our airport, we have 4 sites inside and adjacent to the fence we are now marketing. This is our Sandhills Road area where you're just completing a new major upgrade. We've got a 1 million square foot footprint on county-owned land that we're willing to put into a deal. And right there in the shadow of 295, which we thank you for the work that's being done on that, and love to look forward to that being completed as quickly as possible. This is a military business park where actually your funds helped put the initial roads in, where we're working with a number of military contractors. So, but in closing here, some of the things that from an economic development perspective that we've been talking about, the last few things, we want to compete and we want to win here. We're aggressive, but we also want to leave the field in a condition better than we found it. So our thoughts here in Fayetteville and Cumberland County is we want to lead a regional discussion around transportation infrastructure that makes economic development better. This is a horrible working title. 2 forts in a port. I'm trying to come up with something better, but our partners in Wilmington, our friends at Camp Lejeune and in Jacksonville, so we really, as much as we're supporting our local projects, and when you need support, we are here for you as a region in that way. Seeing 87 completed that 4-lane road, it makes Wilmington better, it makes us better accessing the ports, and it makes every community in that multi-division area more economically competitive. Talking about working out in 24 out to Jacksonville and connecting us. I mean, really linking, when you think about what we pull together with the talent that we have here at Fort Bragg, with the, and I will never make a joke about a Marine because that is just a bad idea, with the incredible folks we have out in Jacksonville, and then that international asset we've invested in the ports. If we can link that better, how strong will southeastern North Carolina be? We're very much interested in, we all would love to see 401 done. Having been in the Charlotte region for the better part of a quarter century, I know that getting through towns and bypasses and routes are tough. We'd love to see the conversation about rail reevaluated, looked at that. I know that a lot has been looked at over the years, but perhaps we have a time now to look at updating costs and estimates and the like and seeing what is really feasible. Because if not getting 401 done in a vehicular sense from Fayetteville to Raleigh, then maybe we can get there by train. I will say it was shocking after being in the high-speed rail corridor and all the work that was done from Charlotte down to up to Raleigh. When I got and bought my ticket, I can get straight up to D.C., but I can't get to Raleigh from here by train. And
let me ask you a question. How are you using the Port of Wilmington
Yeah, how are we?
How are you? Yes.
You know, I've been here 2 years. It was one of the first meetings we had, and that's why we're talking about 87. We somehow, because it is so good with trucks, but Charleston did what it did with rail, we had this misnomer that somehow Charleston, in the broader community, had greater capacity. And so we get down there, and what you find is that if your customer, which when you look at the dominating population statistics of the East Coast and the Southeast, if your customer is within 600 miles of the port, you cannot find a more cost-effective way to get your ocean-fared goods into the United States than our port here. So, and that is why we want to see 87 4-lane the whole way through. It'll cut 20 minutes off for us. It'll also be the port of entry. I don't know if you've had a presentation on the Carolina Core, the 421 corridor linking all the mega sites in our state. That's where we need to bring in those goods. We need to bring them up. Most of them will come by truck. Most will leave in that way. And they're also the rail improvements that have been done on our side has now allowed improved rail access as well into the port. So,
Are you familiar with what we've done at Pembroke and the Pembroke turn?
yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So yes, I'm sorry, I didn't have the name off. Yes, that was a huge thing.
I've been about that for 10 years, and frankly, and I was just wondering if it's working or starting to work.
It just recently done. There's changes at CSX. We've had changes at the ports. We've had changes in local economic development. I'd say we're on the verge of getting it right. But when we have the mayors of Wilmington and the mayors of Fayetteville and the mayors of Jacksonville and those economic development entities all talking together, we're trying to pull together that momentum we need, because no one entity is going to get the national, international recognition we need. We need to put this whole package together. That's a big part of it.
In support of Fort Bragg with their exits and incoming through the Port of Wilmington rather than the Port of Charleston.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, and it was really an eye-opening moment, because I lived in the Charlotte region where Charleston and the ports are closer in equal distance from when you're that far out. And 74 would have made a big difference. I just wasn't there when it was done. But on the flip side is when you actually get down to our port, we've got this, just like Fayetteville has an inferiority complex, there are 16 states without a city the size of Fayetteville in this country. 16 states without a city the size of Fayetteville. We sometimes go, well, we're not Charlotte, we're not Raleigh. We need to recognize our potential. Somehow that happened to our port in Wilmington as well, that we as a regionalized community didn't realize incredibly how competitive that asset is.
Well, we need to encourage that, in my opinion.
And I would suggest, General, that maybe that's a great topic in a meeting for your economic development.
We will be, yes, no question about it, because we
The
spent a lot
Jacksonville
of money.
folks, the Fayetteville folks, and the
We've
ports.
spent close to $40 million to improve the rail access to Fort Bragg so that they were not using the port of Charles.
We would love, that would be an incredible opportunity.
Anyway, I don't want to bog
Yeah,
this
we'd
down,
love
but
to come
I
back
think
to the
that's
committee
an
and talk
important
about that.
issue, and that whenever you're bringing businesses in, they ought to know that we can now get to Wilmington, and we have the
By
facilities.
rail, yes. Yeah, and CSX investment on 95 as well. But we also do want to see the road side, the truck side is that as well. And the last thing I had was, in addition to the passenger rail conversation, and you touched on it, I think it's on your agenda here, but when Secretary Copeland came down days after the hurricane from the Department of Commerce, the conversation I had was, and this is where I really go off the reservation on my own, but nobody has said I'm wrong yet. We had a situation in this community because of the previous storm. We were up and running in 3 days. I kid you not, the storm came in on Friday, offices were open on Monday because we had just gone through it. But we were cut off. You couldn't leave our community, 87 to Fort Bragg out. Rayford, heading out to Rayford, cut off. 95 shut down. And so, again, talking in a regional sense, we very much support, and I was actually just up with meeting with the federal, with folks in D.C. On funding, that the communities that we cannot build every road to withstand these events. But if we can start on a plan that provides one vehicular corridor through these communities that can survive these events or worse, I think from an economic development standpoint and from just a citizen safety standpoint, something we need to keep pushing forward. I know you're talking about that. I know others are talking about how we deal with that, and this is where, to the point of coming together around it, but it's been my personal push saying that we should be able to get people in and out of a community in times of crisis. So with that, again, I just want to say thank you for keeping North Carolina moving. And whether it was the Yadkin River Bridge, the 74 project, or the things we're doing here in Fayetteville and Cumberland County, you guys have made, I know it takes time, but you made incredible strides for this state, and we appreciate it.
Are there other questions for Robert or Christine?
Thank you very much, sir.
Certainly, Robert, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong on that idea because we, I think we recognize not only in this area, but in the Wilmington area and the whole, our whole East Coast, we've got to make sure that we plan for resiliency. So we not only were you cut off, Wilmington was cut off. There were parts of areas around New Bern that was cut off, and so that's high, very high on our radar. Yeah. So thank you, Christine. Thank you for your remarks as well. Next, I would like to bring up Joel Strickland, the Executive Director of the Fayetteville MPO, to come forward and provide a presentation on the activities going on in this area.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, we're thrilled to have the board here, thrilled to have the chance to show y'all Fayetteville and to get a chance to get in front of you and speak, so thank you for coming here. We hope you've enjoyed your time, and it was great getting to talk with you last night. We'll start off, you can see our partners here in Fayetteville and in the Fayetteville MPO. We make up the majority of Cumberland County, mainly everything west of the river. And then we've got a small piece of Harnett County, a small piece of Hope County, and then a real small piece of Robeson County. You guys know what this is, or what MPOs are, but just to give a little bit of background, MPOs are federally mandated, they're federally funded. We have 5 core responsibilities. Our job is to establish and manage a fair and impartial setting for effective regional decision-making, identify and evaluate alternative transportation improvement options, prepare and maintain a MTP, help with the development of a TIP, and involve the public in the process. You can see us here where the majority of our MPO is in Division 6. Hope County does go over into Division 8, so we work with both divisions for those needs. We're grouped in with the Raleigh area for our region, for our spot funding. And our MPO is actually hosted by Cumberland County. I believe we're the only MPO in the state that's hosted by county. Most of them are hosted by cities. A few, I think, are in COGS. But we're actually hosted by the county, which is a little bit different since we don't serve the entirety of the county, but since we serve other counties. But it actually works out well for us. I think it keeps everybody feeling like they still have a fair piece in the game and that we're not so necessarily City of Fayetteville centralized, but I think it creates an environment where everyone feels like they're involved in the process. One of the things that FAMPO went out and did a few years ago and implemented was a Citizens Advisory Committee. Our Citizen Advisory Committee is not federally mandated. It's basically federally mandated that we have a technical committee and an advisory board. But we decided to do a Citizens Advisory Committee several years ago to make sure that we were hearing the voices of the public. And we actually designed this committee to especially invite the participation of underutilized citizens and underutilized groups in the community to make sure that we were getting their feedback. So our Citizens Advisory Committee has been a really good avenue for us to get word out to the public and to get feedback from portions of the community that doesn't necessarily always have the ability to be involved in the process as much as they should. Of course, we also have a technical coordinating committee, which is made up of a lot of staff professionals, a lot of DOT folks, a lot of town planners, city managers, those type of folks. And then, of course, we have our Transportation Policy Board, which, they have the legal authority to speak and act on behalf of the MPO. Mr. Hunt, Mr. Malamphy are both members of that board, and we always appreciate their participation and their efforts in helping us with what we do. I wanted to mention some of the planning initiatives that we've been working on in the FAMPO area and that we have coming up. We just finished our Metropolitan Transportation Plan. That was a huge undertaking. It's required of the MPOs every 5 years. We just finished it. We got the federal approval on it. And, you know, my first job out of college was with the Fayetteville MPO in 2003. Some of y'all may remember Rick Hikeson, who was the MPO director at the time. And Rick's motto was that we did everything in-house. And that was the way I was trained. That was the way I was brought up for the few years. So I worked for Rick for several years, and then I went off into the RPO world. Then I came back to the MPO in 2015, and we were starting to come up on time to do our Metropolitan Transportation Plan again. And as we started getting into it, I started losing staff, and I started thinking, oh my gosh, we've got this plan that's going to be due, and I've got a staff of 3 right now. How are we going to get this done? We got it done, but I've learned now that it is a great idea to use the help of consultants on these plans. So moving forward, our next time we'll probably get some outside help in doing that plan, but hopefully, and according to the feds, we've still got a good plan that we've just gotten approved this year. Some other things that have happened in the area, a lot of this is City of Fayetteville stuff, but we did a Fayetteville Bikes and Walks plan back in 2011. We were really behind the curve on bike and ped facilities in this area, and to an extent we still are, but we're trying to play catch up on that. And with SPOT, you know, we had to have projects documented in plans for them to have the ability to get funding, and we really didn't have an inclusive plan at the time. So this 2011 Fayetteville Bikes and Walks plan was really integral for us getting a lot of facilities into a plan that we could then take forward and ask for funding for. Some other things, Harnett County Comprehensive Transportation Plan was done in 2016. Hope Mills Congestion Management Plan, we did that just last year in 2018. One of the things we've tried to do to manage our congestion in the area is to bite off small area congestion management plans, where we really have areas that are presenting congestion issues. So we did the Spring Lake area several years ago. Just 3 or 4 years ago, we did the Eastern Hoke, Southwestern Cumberland area, which, as Mr. Malamphy knows, Eastern Hoke's growing at a very quick rate. And then this past year, we did Hope Mills, and that's been a really successful plan. We had a lot of good feedback from the public there, had a lot of good public involvement, a lot of good feedback from the town, and we've gotten some really good projects that we think we can move forward through STI now. City of Fayetteville just completed a pedestrian plan in the last year. They're getting ready to embark on a bicycle plan. Sandhills Regional Bike Plan, and I'm going to talk a little more about that in a second, but that's been a really big success for us, and I think that's one of the great things that that DOT is doing right now and that the Bike and Ped Division is doing. And then a Fayetteville to Raleigh Passenger Rail Service Plan, and Robert touched on that a little bit, but that's something that's upcoming, and I'll talk a little more about that also. So the rail initiatives, going back as far as 2002, I think it was, FAMPO, working with the state, started looking at passenger rail, and originally we had an idea of what we called the University Line. Came out of Raleigh, came down through Fayetteville, went down to Pembroke, as we were talking about earlier, and then went down to Wilmington. You know, we had some feedback on that, had some ideas of what we wanted it to be, but it never really went anywhere, and we still just had it in a plan. But here recently, the city of Fayetteville and a lot of our local leadership have expressed the interest in establishing some type of Fayetteville to rail passenger service. So that's something that we're going to look at in 2020. When I found out how much interest we had from our local officials, I went up to the Capital Area MPO, talked with them about their interest in the plan, and they actually said that was the only area they hadn't studied was coming south. They had looked at going east, they had looked at going west, they had looked at going north. So they were willing to partner with us on doing a passenger rail study between Fayetteville and Raleigh. What we're looking at is spending upwards of $500,000 for a 2-phase, 2-year study. FAMPO and CAMPO will both share some of the cost on that. But we're looking at 2 options here. Of course, we've got the Norfolk Southern line, which comes out of Fayetteville, goes up through Harnett County and Lillington, and goes into Raleigh that way. And then you also have the line that leaves Fayetteville, goes over through Johnston County over to Selma, and then comes up to Raleigh. So what we really hope to get out of this plan is better information on the feasibility of the two routes, better information on the needs of the upgrading the existing rail lines, not just for passenger rail, but also for freight rail. And then also looking at the economics and whether or not a passenger rail service between Fayetteville and Raleigh would actually be economically feasible and supported. The Sandhills Regional Bike Plan that I mentioned a little while ago, again, this is a great program that the Bike and Ped Division has. We were able to get a $225,000 grant from NCDOT. It's match-free, which is great for our local areas. And down here, the Cape Fear area, they already had a regional bike plan in place. So we split Bladen County, we split Sampson County, that was covered by the Cape Fear Regional Plan. And then we took our Fampo area and we partnered with Mid-Carolina to include the rest of Sampson and Bladen County and Harnett County, as well as with Campo in the northern Harnett County area. And then we partnered with the Lumber River RPO to bring in Hoke, Scotland, and Robinson County also in this regional bike plan. We have the draft plan now, and you can see some of the results of it here. See some of the facility types that is recommended in the plan, and you can see some of the cut sheets here that the plan has brought forward. And some really good information here, some really good projects that we feel like we can easily move forward, not just projects that are strictly bike and ped type projects, but also projects that can be a full complete street project like you see here along Murchison Road. Murchison Road's a very important corridor to City of Fayetteville. I think the mayor mentioned it last night. So we're looking at several ideas of what to do here near the university especially. Interstate 95 widening, Robert mentioned that a little while ago. This is a big project that we're really excited about. Really excited to see the economic impacts that it could possibly have, but also excited to see the increase in capacity for the area and the better movement of freight and passengers. Fayetteville Outer Loop, this by far has been our most important project to the region for many years now. I think y'all had the chance to go over on the All-American portion yesterday. As you probably know, everything up here coming from North 95 over to All-American is complete. We're hoping to get this piece over to Cliffdale Road complete sometime this year. And then, you know, most of the rest of this is either under construction or will go under construction soon. This is a really great project for us. We're really excited about it. We appreciate y'all's support on that. You were talking about the loops earlier. And this, the economic impact this project has is huge for the region. And also just the ability to move folks quickly, as I think it was the colonel said last night. You know, now folks can get to Fort Bragg quickly off of 95 without having to go all the way through town. Folks coming up from Robinson County can get up to Fort Bragg or into the city of Fayetteville quickly. So this has been a great project for us, and as it continues to move forward, it just keeps gaining more momentum. Every time a new section opens, this piece continues to pick up more traffic, so it's getting great usage, and we're really pleased with the progress of the outer loop. Rowan Street Bridge, I think this was another one the mayor mentioned last night. I think this actually started as just a bridge replacement. The bridge was structurally deficient at the time, but it's turned into more than that. The realignment, it's got a realignment over the CSX Railroad and Hillsborough Street. It provides a great entrance into downtown Fayetteville with all the economic development that's going on there now. It also provides a direct connection to Murchison Road. Again, Murchison Road's a corridor the city's very interested in. It's where Fayetteville State is. They're very interested in it. So this project has really been good for creating an entryway into downtown and also creating an entryway into Fayetteville State. Back to Bike and Ped for a second. The Cape Fear River Trail has been a big success for us in this area. It starts up here to the north around Methodist College and then comes down along the Cape Fear River and currently cuts off at one of the city's parks facilities. But the rest of or another portion of the trail is being completed now, which will actually bring it all the way down beyond 301, almost into downtown Fayetteville. The holdup had been a bridge that we needed to get across CSX, and y'all know how it is to work with CSX, but we've gotten beyond that now. So this project's moving forward, and this is a great project, again, to give folks an alternative means of transportation. When this is complete, you'll be able to go all the way from North Fayetteville down to basically the middle of town and almost downtown, as I mentioned. But what we do have in place is an additional trail coming in here, which connects to Linear Park, which is a trail facility that goes directly to downtown. So we're really excited about this and the possibility that we'll be able to move people on an alternative means of transportation all the way from North Fayetteville all the way into downtown Fayetteville. And this is part of the East Coast Greenway also. Fayetteville Area System of Transit, the new transit center, hopefully y'all had a chance to see it last night while you were downtown. This was a great project for our area, extremely needed. $12.6 million project. It opened in 2017. I actually tried to find a picture of the old transit facility, but I couldn't find one. But basically all it was, literally, was a mobile home in a parking lot with bus shelters out there. And it was pitiful to look at. And our transit director wouldn't even call it a transit center. He was pretty much ashamed of it, and for good reason. So getting this done in 2017 was huge for the city of Fayetteville. We greatly appreciate y'all's help and support on getting that done. It's a great looking facility. It's a very functional facility. It serves our local transit system. It also serves Greyhound, Megabus. So we've got several bus companies using it, and it's just been a real godsend for our transit. And then Robert mentioned earlier, the Fayetteville Regional Airport is undergoing some substantial terminal renovations, including a new concourse, new restaurant, and overall remodel. So this is a great project that our airport director wanted me to mention to you also. He's not a fan of us looking at putting in rail from here to Raleigh because he's scared everybody's going to go from here to Raleigh to catch planes at RDU. But but regardless, that's right. But regardless, we support him. He supports us, and we'll get things done. Again, we appreciate you all coming to Fayetteville. We appreciate the time to talk with you. We appreciate all your support. Again, we greatly appreciate Mr. Hunt and Mr. Malamphy and their support to the MPO and being on our Transportation Advisory Board. We're very fortunate to have a great partnership with NCDOT Division 6 and 8, and have a great partnership with Fort Bragg and our local partners, and that includes you all. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for the time to present to you.
Questions for Joel? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is I-95 and the flood resiliency study update. Greg Burns, and I don't know if you've got anyone else coming, but you can introduce those folks.
Thank you, Chairman Fox. Members of the board, appreciate this opportunity to provide an update on I-95 and some things that are occurring along the corridor. Before we get into that, though, I want to just take a minute to thank Grady Hunt for his guidance and support for planning the events surrounding this week. I really appreciate that, Grady. I also want to thank Ann, Aria, and Chris for their tremendous support. Appreciate that. And also want to thank our Rusty Marsh, our division construction engineer, Drew Cox, our division maintenance engineer, and also Steve Kendall, our division project development engineer, for their support and their staff support in planning this event as well. So we're going to get into some updates on I-95. As you know, 2016 we saw with Hurricane Matthew, major flooding hit the state, and 95 was not exempt to that. That was, we hoped, a once-in-a-lifetime event. Well, we got a second opportunity for a once-in-a-lifetime event from Florence 2 years later. So in response to that, the Secretary guided us toward a resiliency study to look at what we could do to better sustain that corridor, which ties right into Robert's comments regarding I-95 and keeping it a viable open corridor even during events of flooding, et cetera. And then, so Matt Lawfer from our hydraulics unit is here to update us on that resiliency study. He's going to give that update. And then we're going to lead into an update on the I-95 widening project. Dwayne Hathaway with Michael Baker International is here. They're the lead designers on one of the projects that's occurring. He's going to give us an update on that. And then Scott Boyles, who is with Gannett Fleming, they're assisting us with project management, and he's going to update us on that. So, Matt, if you'd come forward, we'll let you start.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Burns, Greg, thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity to just update you on I-95 and the I-40 resilience study. Thank you for your service, and we'll jump right in here. So I'm with the hydraulics unit, and our primary function is to one of our primary functions is to support the divisions and project delivery of water-based solutions. So today we're just going to talk a little bit more about the directive that Secretary Trogdon gave us to look at the I-95 and I-40 corridor. Greg asked me to come, so pretty much today I'm going to focus on I-95, but we'll touch a little bit on I-40 as well. So in the brief time we have today, I'd like to share with you the purpose of the flood feasibility study and the limitations of that study, define the methodology and approach, look at how we got there, and then look at the I-95 improvement options and then the next step. So today it's going to be more of an overview of how we got here, and once the study comes out, we can come back and give a little bit more on the specifics of that. So as Greg mentioned, we had a couple significant events, Hurricane Matthew and Hurricane Florence in 2016 and 2018 respectively. Hurricane Florence alone took 43 lives. We had $17 billion in property damage in the state, significant agricultural damage. Between Hurricane Matthew and Florence, the Department of Transportation declared damages approaching $300 million. These events had significant impact on the highway and our infrastructure. In Matthew, there were about 600 road closures in North Carolina, including portions of Interstate 40 and 95 underwater, as we got depicted up here, and over 2,100 required road repairs. Then following Florence, we had an additional 2,500 roads were closed, significant impact there. And then we're working on over 3,100 sites that needed repair and attention. So on the left here, we have I-95, Lumber River. That's a pretty historic picture. And then on the right, we have I-40 near Warsaw, thanks to our drone footage, guys, I think. So pretty significant. Now, during those events, just to emphasize this, like on Matthew and both Florence, I-95 was significantly impacted there in Lumberton. Over a week of flooding went on there. And then during Florence, I-40 was shut down and for over 9 days. And the city of Wilmington was totally waterlocked. So it's the first time I know of that ever happening. So it was significant. So the purpose of this study then, there's two major objectives here. The first is to identify flood improvements to increase the flood resiliency of I-95 and I-40. And if we talk about resiliency, Federal Highways defines resilience as the ability to anticipate, prepare for, and adapt to changing conditions and withstand and respond to and recover rapidly from disruptions. So that's a long definition, but basically you have a level of service, you have an event, that level of service drops, you want to get back to that level of service as best you can. In this study, we're trying to bring that level of service higher so that when we have a disruption like Matthew and Florence, we don't have an impact to our transportation mobility and connectivity. It's good to look at, went too far there. It's good to look at the scale of flooding and understand the importance of that as well. These two graphs on the left are basically showing the inundation of the floodwaters approximately. We've got I-95 there running up here. We've got I-40 here. You've got about 10 locations on I-95 that were severely impacted, and then about 7 on I-40. The graphic also shows this magnification of the Lumberton area, and you can kind of just see the interconnectivity of both the interstate highway and then the surrounding area. So as we deal with these issues, we've got to really, look at also the impacts of those things, of the highway in that environment, and then when we do changes, what that does. In addition, just to give it a little bit more information on the event, NOAA reported rainfall of about 36 inches in 4 days in certain parts of southeast North Carolina. Just to get an understanding of the magnitude of that, NOAA also puts out these statistical representations of rainfall based on historical data, and what 16 inches of rainfall in 4 days is a 1,000-year event. So, we doubled that. So it's pretty significant. Now, that rainfall didn't happen over the entire corridor, so what we did see was precipitation amounts between 500 and 1,000-year rainfall frequencies, and then the flows that result from that, they're not directly connected to the rainfall, but pretty close. USGS reported 500-year flood flows through most of the gauges in and around Lumberton and Fayetteville. So the second purpose of the study, too, is to identify strategies so that we can mitigate against future flooding disasters, not only on this corridor, but others in North Carolina that we're looking at. So, you start kind of listening to the climate scientists and just listening to what the data that's coming in, and what the trends are showing that the Earth's temperature is rising, and as a result of that, intensity of rainfall events is expected to increase, and the frequency of extreme events like Hurricane Matthew and Florence will increase. And if anybody in this room that's been dealing with transportation over the last, there's been some significant events, not only just the hurricanes, but the intensity of localized summer events and things like that that have caused major havoc. The other graph here on the right shows, other graph on the right here just shows that with the statistical analysis out of the National Climate Assessment Report, we're seeing increases in extreme events as they do these statistics. So they're just looking at the data and kind of seeing what it's showing. And as we talk about this, I want to just emphasize, too, that this flood study that we did here, resilience study, it was not a full NEPA, SEPA documentation, or did we have time to look at all the secondary impacts of the flood improvements that we did here. So just realize that as we get into more detailed planning to design on I-95, like we're going to hear a little bit more in a little bit, we'll get into that more as we need to. So stepping into the methodology. So the methodology was, first we wanted to assess the vulnerability, and then we wanted to define our resilience criteria. What is that criteria that we want to hit as we're operating these transportation facilities? And then what kind of improvement options did we look at? So the first part of this was assessing the vulnerability. So we had interviews with the division. Division 6 and both Division 3, they did an outstanding job of documentation of these flood events. You guys live it. You guys, we're up there stuck in Raleigh, right, at the JFHQ watching the event. You guys are living it down here. And so the actual identification of these flooding events and documenting them is huge when we get back into the models and trying to assess that. So we really thank the divisions for that. In addition, we followed up with field visits with the divisions, and then in the field, and then Drew Cox really helped out a lot with that, and we appreciate that. And then we also had to go out and look at these sites a little bit more. So on the left here, this is Lumberton, and the divisions have designated like the timing, the depth of the event, the flooding that they saw, and I put some really good graphics together to document that. And this is during Matthew, mile marker 26, I believe, where we had significant culvert damage on I-95. The final graphic over here just shows the summary of those by mile marker along these critical corridors. So mile marker 17 to 21 down in Lumberton, you got 26, 35, 44, and on up to mile marker 70 along the corridor. And I didn't mention, but our study was directed to stay from Benson south on I-95 and Benson south on I-40 for this study. So moving on, we went to the resilience criteria. So what were we going to set our resilience criteria for? So in discussions, we looked at both Hurricane and Florence high water elevations, and then we also looked at the 100-year flood design criteria. And just to, we talk about the 100-year, but we talk about, well, we've had a 500-year, and we've had a 1,000-year, and we've had a 200-year. So what that really is a statistical analysis of data that we have, and we look at it. So the 100-year flood is basically, in statistical terms, a 1% chance per year. So the current level of design on I-95 when it was built in the 70s, and getting that right about, was it a 50-year flood? And so that's like a 2% chance per year. So as we talk to the climate scientists and talk to our peers in the industry, the 100-year flood design criteria is probably a more resilient level of service that we're trying to achieve now, or should try to achieve. In addition here, this on the right is just a picture of how we collect those high water marks during events. That's a GPS receiver there. So we went into to categorize these, we looked at mobility and connectivity options for our improvement options. So mobility, for the purposes of this study, is defined as providing flood-resilient roadway access and maintaining interstate traffic capacity. The primary mobility options focused on maintaining or improving the traffic capacity of I-95 and I-40. So that's the mobility option. The connectivity option, for the purpose of this study, is defined as providing flood-resilient roadway access that does not maintain the interstate traffic capacity. Examples of connectivity options include elevating an existing two-lane roadway or improving a two-lane alternate route to achieve roadway connectivity. So, making sure we have connectivity in those events. And then once we had those categories, we looked at elevating the road, increasing hydraulic capacity, meaning making those openings on bridges or maybe raising those bridges, culverts, cross pipes, looking at constructing flood barriers, drainage improvements, and then just existing alternate routes. Didn't really look at a lot of additional routes on the I-95 options, just due to the conversations with the divisions, and the inundation of parallel routes like 301 really aren't an option when we get these large flood events. So we really focused in on I-95 on this I-95 portion. So here's an example of the quick analysis that we did to look at, once we've had an area, this is the Cape Fear on I-95. And so it's really hard to see, but just for presentation understanding, right here's the profile of the road, and we have the existing profile, and then basically what we needed to take that road to hit the design criteria. The plan view then shows the extents, the horizontal extents of that, and then we took that information and derived cost estimates on this. We used information from the DOT Estimate Management Unit, as well as our strategic prioritization group, to get planning level cost for these alternatives. Then the other areas of improvements we looked at, as I mentioned, increasing the hydraulic capacity, drainage improvements, and temporary flood barriers. So on the right, we have where Highway NC 24 and I-95 come together, and this is near mile marker 52. So we looked at this a little bit more. So we had the option of elevating the road, or maybe looking at drainage. And so in this area, we believe that drainage is more of the concern here, and would be the more cost-effective option than actually raising and elevating that road, where you'd have to deal with the interchange and all those other features there that would be problematic and highly cost prohibitive. So we'll look at that a little bit more as we get into the design with the design teams. And then on the left, we have, this is South Carolina DOT on 501 to Conway. They are looking at actually concerned about getting cut off totally. And so they deployed these, that's called an aqua dam. there, and it's basically a big geotextile tube, like a big rubber balloon, basically, and they fill it with water, and then it's the cost of these are about $300,000 per mile. So they installed about 3 miles of this product to protect the infrastructure during that event. And so it's on a large river basin. I think it was the Yadkin, and they on the PD down there, and it was they had warning time. They knew the flood was coming, so they could set up. So in cases where you know it's coming and you got days to prepare, this might be a good option. Yes, it did. It did. They didn't get the levels that they thought they were going to get, but it did help quite a bit. The thing you got to be really careful with on these, they're filled with water, right? So you have to maintain freeboard. If you get water as high as that, it'll just float and move on, right? So.
One other question.
Yes,
too.
sir.
With that solution, you know, the water's going to go somewhere. Do we consider where that goes in terms of if we're, you know, where we're pushing water?
Yes, you would need to, right?
Right.
You need to if you're going to use that type of device, you know, the upstream homeowners or
Right.
other folks, we need to understand that through modeling and
Right.
deploy that at the appropriate time. Correct. Yes. Yes, sir. Okay, and then just so we could optimize the cost of these flood improvements in the report, and you'll see that, we looked at the other TIP projects that are ongoing along the corridor. So these are a summary of the other TIP projects that the division is looking at along the corridor. And so you've got some that are actually programmed and have funding, and others that aren't at this time. But this gives a good summary based on mile marker and location of the different flood improvement in relation to the TIP projects. So, and there is a significant savings when you start looking at that, because you start talking, if we're going to, widen 95 to 8 lanes with the TIP, and all we got to do is raise it up a little bit. You're talking about the fill, maybe a little bit longer on the bridge, and some additional right-of-way requirements. But there's definitely some economic benefit of doing that. So next steps, we're going to finalize that draft report. That should be here in the next couple of weeks, and then needs to go through an internal review, and then it'll be pushed out probably early spring. So, and then we'll implement. That's when the bigger discussions occur, and we implement as feasible. So, and then any questions for the
Mike?
Quick question as part of this study and total focus. You know, the areas that remained high and dry and sort of became those go-to routes to get goods and services to the affected areas. I'm in Division 3.
Mm-hmm.
Are you looking at those in terms of enhancements as a contingency from a cost-benefit standpoint in addition to this interstate study? Because, to me, that may be the most cost-effective near-term solution, is to make certain that those routes that are naturally high, naturally resilient, that we make certain that we focus on those from a risk perspective, or from the lack of percentage of this, occurring, that we make certain we have those routes ready, for like-type storms and accumulations of water, if you will.
You'll see in the I-40 portion of the report where we've looked at 421, 53, 117, and like 421's an excellent, that example. So we met with the division staff on that, and there's some definite options in there for review and cost. So, yes, sir.
Other questions for Matt? Great, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Great, thank you. Okay, you're next. Oh, sure.
Come on up, Dwayne and Scott.
It's right here. Good morning. How are you? Good morning.
So Greg Burns is kind enough to ask us to present on the 95 project. Appreciate the board giving us the time to present on this historic and exciting project. This project represents the first true modern widening of Interstate 95 in the state of North Carolina. Also includes the first portion of 95 that was completed in North Carolina back in the 1950s. So I'm going to present. Scott and I are going to tag team on these presentations. So I'm going to present on the team and then give a project overview, and then Scott will step in and talk about how we've been executing this project. So just a quick update on the evolution of this. So in February of 16, this project was started as 3 interstate improvement projects. It was safety improvements to replace bridges, provide the required minimum vertical clearances, and also improve the ramps and service roads and bring those up to modern standards. And over the course of 3 years, the project has grown significantly, both in scope and size, to 25 miles of interstate widening. So what we're going to present to you today is how we are accelerating the project and innovating, some of the success stories and challenges that we faced, lessons learned so far, and then certainly the importance of the INFA grant and how that's helped this project grow and be successful. So the owner on the project is Division 6. Greg Burns and his team have done a great job meeting this project head on. Steve Kendall, Scott Pridgeon, and many others. It's been a true teaming effort to keep this project on schedule. Also, I want to mention Division of Highways. They've done a great job. The units have accelerated reviews on our plans. They've short notice on meetings, called in on conference calls. It's really been a team effort to keep this thing on track. Michael Baker, who I'm with, we've done the transportation planning and design on the project. We've done the preliminary design for the whole corridor and are currently working on the final design from exit 70 up to 81. Supporting us on the project, Sungate Design Group, doing the drainage, S&ME doing geotechnical and foundations, and then Ramey Kemp and Associates doing signing and the noise analysis. Gannett Fleming, who Scott's with, they're the owner's rep and program management, helping support Division 6, managing the project. And then American Acquisition Group, AAG, they are contracted with the division to do the right-of-way acquisition on the project. So a quick overview of the project. 25 miles. This project spans 2 divisions, both Division 4 and 6, 3 counties, Cumberland, Harnett, and Johnston County. And then due to the length, it includes 6 towns and cities, Eastover, Wade, Falcon, Godwin, and then getting into the more urban area, Dunn and Benson. So the purpose and need of the project, so locally, this route provides access to work, schools, parks, recreational facilities, medical facilities, shopping, and many, many other destinations. As far as regionally, it provides access and a route connecting the Raleigh-Durham area and also the Fayetteville area. And also, it's a hurricane evacuation route, which is obviously critical, what we faced last year and what Matt talked about. Statewide significance, it's on the National Highway System. It's also part of the Strategic Highway Network. And then it also links Fort Bragg with many of the military facilities up and down the East Coast. So quickly talking about the project, the 25 miles, it includes 10 interchange improvements. Some of this information here will change based on the design build, but roughly 19 new bridges, 12 reinforced concrete box culverts, and 27 service roads updated to modern standards. And 3 of these bridges being mainline and several of these culverts being full replacements under the interstate. It's going to be a challenge and a complex maintaining traffic on Interstate 95 to accommodate the existing 4 lanes. Some of the traffic volumes in the corridor are upwards of 60,000 vehicles per day, so the project's going to ease congestion, accommodate future growth, and retain 95 as a vital part of North Carolina's transportation system. So the estimated cost, as of now, the property acquisition, just under $100 million, utility relocations around approximately $3 million, and then the construction cost is estimated to be just over $600 million, so a total of roughly $710 million to complete the project. Project timeline, so the public meetings were held around the October of 18. We did have one public meeting that did have to be rescheduled due to the hurricane. As far as the CE, the categorical exclusion, what I want to note here is I've got February of 19. I actually cheated ourselves out of a month. We had it signed in January, so 11 months to get the environmental document on this project, which is unheard of as recently as 2 or 3 years ago. The project is broken into 2 parts. The design build portion of it goes from Business 95 up to exit 71 at Long Branch Road. The bid's open, and that's awarded in July, and anticipate construction starting in fall. And Scott will get more into how we're able to get construction going so quickly on a design build. Now, the bid build portion of the project that Michael Baker's working on, the final design, that's supposed to let in July of 2020, and construction would start in the fall of 2020, and the whole 25-mile corridor would be complete in year 2024. So I'll let Scott get up and talk about the way we're executing this project.
Okay, thanks, Dwayne. I want to highlight a few things as this project now gets unique. As Greg and Dwayne said, Gannett Fleming was hired, myself along with Jerry Page, to come in and be an extension of the division staff. So Greg found, and Steve found a different way to bring in another resource for the division to help deliver and execute while still maintaining division-managed projects. So we were joined in late 17, and Jerry and I came in, Dwayne and his team already started the designs on the interchanges. So our goal coming in was how are we going to execute this with the given scheduled let dates at the time. So I want to touch on 4 or 5 things. Mainly we came in and we want to bring the design build mentality, and what do we mean by that is we got to accelerate the design and planning approach to this to get this project let. And how do we do that? So with that methodology, we're basically taking this design build without a contractor. So we're taking our design build team, the division staff, NCDOT central business units, all other stakeholders, and bringing this together. So our goals of that was, well, we needed to accelerate the CE document, which Dwayne mentioned. It forced us to come, and you talk about a team, this is what became an organization more than just a team. And we had a lot of people involved that were working concurrently. And we had to come up with some innovative ways to get through the design process, progress, and our design approach. So we kind of developed the motto, well, we can't say can't through all this. If we found something, all right, how do we work around it to get to the end in mind on what we need to get to? This was not a traditional planning and design approach. So we knew there were challenges in the traditional way that we were going to come up against, and we planned ahead to, all right, we know that that right-of-way is coming up. How are we going to prepare ourselves to get through some of the septic system surveys that take a long time, knowing the appraisals are going to be extended? So we're backing up at a lot of those dates. That was a challenge for us, and we planned ahead for that. Resources, we had to make sure all resources were in place from Dwayne's staff to the right-of-way through division as well. We had this infra grant come into play, which that was a game changer, I guess, for us coming in. And then the two last bullets there, you see dates there, July 2019 and July 2020. And I won't get into the details, but we had several meetings with DOT, and Bobby Lewis, would call these meetings, and we had several of them. The first one, we left that meeting, and of course he asked to accelerate the project. We had another meeting, came back, and he asked to accelerate that project. So if Bobby was here, I'd say, please don't schedule any more meetings, and if you did, you may not have anybody show up with acceleration. So these are the 2 dates right now that we are underway. In a couple months, you'll have the design build portion part being let to contract, which is under procurement right now. Success stories. Let me get back to the right. There we go. Okay. So how do we execute this again? We're going to have to accelerate and innovate. Some of the methods that we knew we had to come together with, and I'll just go through these quickly, we had to have FHWA up front with us and constantly on our phone calls, on our coordination, on our meetings that we had bi-weekly. The permitting agencies, again, division staff did excellent with Jim calling in the agencies at the appropriate time, keeping them updated. Communication internally with the DOT was a method of acceleration. We invited, I think we've touched every business unit in NCDOT at one point in time on our coordination calls to keep things accelerated and not delay. Again, the use of design build approaches through this process to help accelerate, and the lessons learned, utilizing as we go through some of the traditional ways that we knew we had to work around. Some of the innovation that we stepped into with this, we knew right away, I think we were the count's close to 400 parcels through this whole corridor. So we knew at some point in time, and Greg emphasized this early on, does AAG have the Army ready once these plans come out to start the right-of-way acquisition? And we brought that in early on, made assured that AAG had the team. They came and presented to us to be prepared for that. So that is going through the process right now. We looked at advanced total takes. Let's get the projects identified that we know are total takes was a way to get this accelerated. Utility coordination. We all know what utility conflicts and utility owners do to a project. So we brought that early on. The other challenge and element was also coordinating early on with any of the drainage to make sure the relocations of the utilities could be done and not come up with anything later on in the design process to hold us up. And then nested design build, as we said, another innovative way with direction of getting the project in construction. We advanced the one section of the project enough that it was nested in with the remaining part to become a design build, which accelerated the method of delivery to begin construction. Again, that will be happening in July for the letting of that. Some success stories, Dwayne has mentioned some of them. The CE document acceleration, you heard 11 months. And that, again, caused by teamwork among ourselves as far as the design and agencies. Listening and investing to stakeholders. That involves that through the public meetings we got a lot of voices concerning of how their properties are impacted, businesses and private owners. So we invited these folks from hotel owners, the truck stop owners, private owners of coming in, and we sat down and met with them up front to bring them up front during the design as opposed to the tail end, such that when the right-of-way acquisition started, those folks knew what was going to be happening and they would hopefully be in agreement for settlement. Right-of-way process, again, that was part of understanding at our level or at our timeline of the process is what's going to hold up the right-of-way what's typically some of the the stumbling blocks, and so we addressed those and prepared for that. This is not only Division 6, but it's Division 4, so we're crossing some boundaries, and we're not only working with internally, but with another division of staff for the portion that's north of Benson. The other item to mention about the business units within DOT, that again, they were assisted us in a lot of our coordination meetings, and some of the units we recognize like Noise and Air with Missy is really looking at this to help accelerate some for her approach of noise in kind of using this as a pilot program. And overall, everyone just worked real hard. Challenges and some lessons learned, decisions. That was, I think, Dwayne and I, as we got together, we need decisions made. We can't wait a week because it really impacts the whole schedule of the project. So, we had a lot of stakeholders that influenced those decisions. And you can see there the list of bullets that municipalities, the counties, RPOs, and again, within the division staff. So lessons learned so far is the engagement of stockholders and mainly the property owners up front is good. And then the decision-making process to help that would impact the project schedules and costs. So early, often direct communication, we see that and continue to see that ensures that the project schedule can keep going. And finally, just to touch on and highlight again the schedules for 5986, you can see there for the exit 56 to 71, that's the July let that's coming up. And then the other section that we're continuing to work on towards the July 2020 let date. And then we have another project that also is 5987 that will be coming in right behind the 5986 project. This runs from Lumberton at exit 22 to exit 40. And you can see the right-of-way dates and let dates there. This is approximately 18 miles as well. And then finally, just to highlight, Greg wanted to be sure to emphasize again what the benefits of the infra grant to the project will bring. And some of this information comes from Bobby's previous, you've probably seen this before, from Bobby's previous presentations. Again, just to highlight of what is going on as far as the widening that's taking place, basically it's going to be from Lumberton to north of Benson to 40, raising the elevation, as Matt had mentioned, through the Lumberton area due to floods. And then the innovation due to the infra grant is going to allow the technology, the project delivery, and the innovative financing, which comes from the revenue of the leasing of the fiber that will be put in as part of the infra grant. So with that, we'll turn it back over to Greg, and appreciate your time, and look forward to answering any other questions.
Thanks, Scott. Just to clarify, this is actually an additional infra grant that Bobby is working on and has submitted, and we have not received approval on that, but we hope to. Thanks to Scott and Dwayne for their presentation, and also Matt. Any questions?
Questions for Greg or any of the presenters? Thank you. That was a great update. Thank you, folks. And it's a huge and critical project, so we appreciate the update on that, as well as the hydrology work. Matt, thank you for that. Our next item is, I just want to make you aware, as usual, our product evaluation program awareness handout is there. I would also note you have another handout from Van Argebright. I want to just bring this to your attention. Normally, we would vote on the STIP, which we've all worked so hard on the past couple years. Normally, we would vote on that in June. There are some things that are going on in terms of the budget and our finances. We're in the process of completing the sale of Garvey bonds, and also working with the Treasurer's Office on hopefully having our Build NC bonds, and then also, as I'm sure you're aware, the budget is being considered in the legislature right now. So Secretary and I thought it would be prudent to delay the final approval of the STIP until September, just to give those things time to churn through their normal processes, because the last thing we want to do is approve a STIP, and then if, depending on how those things work out, we may be able to, the projects may be advanced, projects may not, depending on, how those work out. So that's just information only, but I'm sure as you go to your MPO and RPO meetings and talk to your local folks, you'll get questions about that. So we want to make sure you understood why we were doing that. Our last item is the approval of the remaining projects other than item O. And at this time, I'll ask if any board members have any recusals that they need to make. Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have three. On item I-4, it's project 36244.12.11.1. Under M13, it is project 44920.1.1, and my last one is under item O, that's project 36249.4009, and I have the form submitted.
Okay, anyone else? Landon?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Due to or an abundance of caution due to a potential conflict of interest, I'd like to recuse myself from agenda item K1, K4, M3, M8, as well as agenda item N, specifically project EB-6031, and I have my forms as well.
Okay, thank you, Landon. Anyone else? Mike?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, page K, project K-2, page 42, U-5793, K-5, page 45, project B-6052, item N, page 78, B-6052, and I filled out the appropriate paperwork. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone on the phone have any recusals? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Hugh.
Second.
Second by Landon. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Grady, would you like to come up and say a few words?
I would.
Come on up.
Mr. Chairman, it's just to thank folks. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. And without, starting Tuesday night, Dr. Britt Davis over at Campbell, Gordon Springle from the Harnett County Board of Commissioners were tremendous hosts, and appreciate all they did. Yesterday with Colonel Reed, the garrison commander at Fort Bragg. Last night, Doug Hewitt and Mayor Colvin with the City of Fayetteville, of course, the Airborne and Special Operations Museum, the Fayetteville Woodpeckers, our host here, the Embassy Suites, and the Governance Office, Ann, Aria, Chris, and finally, Greg Burns and his staff. I've got way too much credit. Those are the people that really put this together, and I'm grateful and thankful to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to echo that, and many of you have been in the position where you've hosted a board meeting. So those of you who know that, you know the team that it takes to make that happen. And we've had a great meeting. I mean, every time we go somewhere, it reaffirms what a good decision it is to occasionally get out of Raleigh and see projects firsthand and talk to folks in local communities about what's important for them in terms of infrastructure and transportation. And Greg and Grady, you guys have done a great job, and so we'll look forward to Blowing Rock and the High Country in October, and then we'll start planning where we're going, for 2020. So those of you who are interested in that, we can talk about our next traveling events. So that's all our agenda item. I would remind everyone that our next board meeting is in Raleigh, first week of June, usual time and place. Is there any other business before the board? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion by Tony, second. Second by Andy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Yeah. I'd like to.